Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dan Lanning, the Oregon Ducks are absolutely buzzing on the recruiting trail, and we don't have a commitment to break down, but we do have some updates from this Oregon program on the recruiting trail. I think the most current one coming Monday night. Five-star quarterback Jerry Curtis, the number one quarterback in the 2026 class, coming out and saying that his interest in Oregon is higher than any other program that's on his board. Want to get into Jerry Curtis, but I think more importantly, want to get into the conversation regarding where this Oregon Ducks program is going, not only on the football field in 2024, but where they're going as a program in general under Dan Lanning. We kind of said that football game against Ohio State, not only was it massive in terms of the landscape of the 2024 season, Oregon ranked number one in the country right now, but more importantly, or just as importantly, this really was an opportunity for Oregon to show on a national stage that it is the program to be at. And winning that football game, I don't think it's a coincidence that the amount of buzz around this Oregon program, the commitments that have been coming in, that game meant a lot more than just setting Oregon up for success in 2024. Want to get into Jerry Curtis, but also have some updates on a ton of other prospects in this 2026 class. Now, before we get into it, as always, to the Oregon fans, been a blast talking this program. Many of you guys know that. The amount of support that y'all have shown the fellas, it's been amazing. Can't thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Let it fly in the comment section. Without further ado, let's get into this one. I want to start, and we're going to talk. We'll start with Jerry Curtis, right? Jerry Curtis was committed to Georgia, decommits to Georgia, opens up his recruitment again, and it doesn't sound like Oregon is the top choice on the board for Jerry Curtis. Now you look at Jerry Curtis, the football player, 6'4", 225, an absolute hose of an arm. Now, do I think he's the most polished quarterback ever in this 2026 class? No, probably not, but he's still just a junior in high school, finishing out his junior year. There's still a lot of time for him to develop the physical traits that this kid brings to the table. It's special. That's why he's a top 10 national prospect in this 2026 class. Rocket arm, big body, phenomenal athlete as well, and can really make all the throws that you want him to make on the football field. Now, why do I think Jerry Curtis is such a fascinating example for why Oregon, and it really just an example of the momentum that Oregon's building on the recruiting trail? I want to start with the Oregon poll. You look at Jerry Curtis and the Oregon fans who follow the recruiting trail really closely. I couldn't find a time where he visited Oregon. So if he did visit Oregon, correct me if I'm wrong. This kid is out in Nashville, Tennessee. I don't think has stepped foot on Oregon's campus and is coming out and saying Oregon is the school that he's most interested in. Talk about Oregon Ducks pull on the recruiting trail. You talk about a program that you want to go play football at. It doesn't get any bigger than that, right? You have a ton of SEC programs in the backyard of Jerry Curtis that have hosted him countless times on campus, and he says Oregon, the team out in the Pacific Northwest, is the team I want to go play for. That just represents the pull that Oregon has as a program. And I think secondly, like the offensive playmakers are starting to flood into this program, right? Dante Moore transferring to Oregon, DeCorian Moore, Dallas Wilson in the 2025 class. Dan Lanning has done such a good job. He was a defensive-minded guy coming from Georgia, but has really, really done a good job hiring on the offensive side of the football. What Will Stein has done with this Oregon offense in terms of creating just an offensive juggernaut, it is suddenly becoming a program that if you are an elite quarterback or an elite wide receiver, quite frankly, a very good offensive lineman, you want to go play for this program because you know this Oregon offense every single year is going to give you the opportunity to be extremely productive. Now, as a Michigan fan, this is something that Michigan struggles with where, look at Michigan's offense, not only this year, but over the last couple of years, it just hasn't been an offense that has put a ton of points up on the board. So as a result, Michigan struggles to attract these kind of guys. I mean, Oregon now is trending to have won back-to-back Heisman contenders. And if you're a quarterback, like you want to go to a program that's just pumping out guys that are at the top of the sport at the quarterback position, Bo Nix, now Dylan Gabriel. But I think more importantly, Oregon's trending now for a second straight year of having one of the best offenses in the country. You want to attract offensive talent. You want to attract the quarterbacks and wide receivers. If you can continue to put out those kind of performances, the talent's going to come. And again, this is all while you have a defensive minded head coach running this program. I think finally, like Dan Lanning's relentless. And this is one of the reasons I love the Dan Lanning hire to begin with, is that he kind of rose up the coaching rankings under guys like Nick Saban and under guys like Kirby Smart. Those two guys, relentless recruiters. They know what it takes to put together some of the best recruiting classes that you see in the country. That's how Dan Lanning has decided to run this program. Not only Dan Lanning from the top being a relentless recruiter, we all know what he does on the trail, but he's also hired guys around him. You talk about a guy like Rashad Samples, who we talked about in the offseason. Why was Rashad Samples, to me, such an intriguing hire? Yeah, he's been a proven good football coach on the offensive side of the football, but more importantly, he's been a proven track record of being an elite recruiter. And so Dan Lanning understands that, yeah, I want to get good football coaches, but I'm also going to surround this Oregon program and load this Oregon coaching staff up with guys that are dogs on a bone in terms of getting recruits and landing commitments. And that's kind of what you're seeing here. I mean, the success on the football field and just how, look, if I was 6'4, 225, had a rocket arm and I was a quarterback, I ain't. Y'all know I ain't. I'm 5'8", and that's giving myself an inch. But if I was that, I would be wanting to go to play for the Oregon Ducks. I mean, you see all the media that they're putting out. There's not a program that's more attractive to these high school kids than Oregon. So you combine like what Oregon is doing as a program, where they're going with a coaching staff that is going to make you a priority on the trail. That's kind of what you're seeing from Oregon on the recruiting trail. Now, Jerry Curtis is not the only news we have to talk about because he's kind of stick in the 2026 class. And I would remind Oregon fans, as we sit right now, Oregon has the number one class in the country in 2026. Zion Elee, also crystal ball to go to Oregon. And again, these are not commitments. There is still no doubt a long way to go, especially with 2026ers. Again, it kind of shows the buzz around Oregon. You look at Zion Elee, 6'3 and a half, 220, the number 2 ranked player according to 24/7 Sports, the number 1 ranked edge rusher, another guy that is from the state of Maryland across the country. One, Oregon's doing a phenomenal job at the DMV. I mean, there's a lot of really talented players from that area that are going to play at Oregon. I think more importantly, you look at Zion Elee and say, this is what you want your edge defenders that look like 6'3 and a half, 220, plays multiple positions at the high school level. I'm not going to get too much into Zion Elee. This is more an episode to kind of highlight where Oregon's going on the recruiting trail. Look, I think they finished with a very good class in 2025. It is very clear that Dan Lanning knows how he wants to build this program. He's going to use the transfer portal to bring in guys that this program needs. But I think over the next 5 to 10 years while Dan Lanning is here, probably longer, he's not going to consistently bring in 15 guys in the transfer portal. It's probably going to be closer to 8 to 10, and he's going to build primarily from the high school recruiting classes. And you can tell he's putting a ton of emphasis. And I think he's identified 2026 as, that class we want to build, and we want to have a special group of kids coming into that 2026 class. They're obviously off to a phenomenal start with the number 1 class, trending for 2 more top 10 national guys on the recruiting trail. Both guys that are on the East Coast, like Dan Lanning is grabbing talent from anywhere. Whereas Texas, it's Cali, it's good, the DMV. It's been really, really impressive what Dan Lanning's doing on the recruiting trail. Wanted to hop on, and this was something I wanted to talk about. I just didn't know when to talk about it because Oregon's got so many big games coming up. I thought this was a perfect time to talk about it. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.